Hello, my name is Kay Reeve and this is my upcoming book, Brain Unchained. Well, I say upcoming, we're due to do the launch on the 19th of January, so there's lots going on in the background. But in the meantime, if you're desperate to get a hold of a copy of this, it's already available on Amazon. But before you go there, let me tell you a little bit about it. Brain Unchained is based on a system that I developed to help my son through 12 years of chronic depression. He was suicidal a lot of that time, and it was a very difficult time, obviously for him, very stressful for him, and it was also extremely stressful for me as a parent. There were times when I tried to get help and I took him to different therapies, and either he'd just blank them out and they'd not help, or sometimes you'd get there and go, oh no, mum's making it all up, I'm fine, and they dismiss you, write you off the books. And if you've been there, you'll know how that feels. You might be struggling with a teenager, or you might be the teenager who's struggling, and you might be like, I don't want to go for therapy, there's all this stigma around it, I don't feel like I could talk to somebody outside the house. Or you might be the parent who's struggling to get a teenager to actually get help outside the house. And that's actually where I got to at one point. And my son actually said, that's it, I'm not taking my problems outside this house. And he refused help flatly. And the only thing that achieved was leaving me dealing with his emotional meltdowns and temper tantrums and his frustrations for the next 5 years. And again, being very suicidal at times. And that could mean me having to sit with him 2 or 3 hours at a time because he didn't want to trouble me with his problems. When in reality, if he actually sat down and talked with me really nicely about his problems, we could have helped resolve them a lot sooner. But the problem was, and there was a big problem, my son did not understand emotional awareness. He'd been diagnosed at the age of 8 with Asperger's, which is on the autistic spectrum. And he'd already been suicidal, trying to commit suicide as early as the age of 8. So it had been a very long and very difficult journey for us. It was by the time he got to about 19, 20 years old that I was at my wit's end. I did not know where else to turn to get help. He was in the worst state possible at this time. He was completely disconnected from the world. He was shut off. He was just closed in on himself, turned his back on everything, and we just couldn't seem to get through to him. And it was like there was this body walking around that represented my son, but it was very difficult to see him in that body the way we had known him. It got really, really severe. And in absolute desperation, I sat down with him and said, right, let's start at the very, very beginning. And I talked to him about his 4 core emotions, just 4, and I related them to colours. You'll probably see up here some of them as well with colours. And on the back of the book, there is a diagram. And this represents the 4 colours that I started talking to my son about. And then I went back and had a second conversation with him about why his emotions changed. Because let's face it, why do our emotions change? We're happy. What happens? Why do we suddenly go sad or angry, depressed? Do you know what? Our emotions change because something else changed. Now, that could be something internal, something in yourself that's changed, or it could be something external, in the outside world, something else that's changed. But how do we break that down and understand that in terms of making positive change to actually taking control of those emotions again? And that's what this book is about. So the book is about understanding the emotions in your mind, how they relate to colours, and giving you a map. Now, it might look a very simple map, but the book breaks it down into quite a distinctive chapter about all the reasons why you need emotional awareness and how it will help you, taking you through the concepts of being lost, and the challenges that you face by not actually owning up to your emotions and starting to take control of your own learning. The second chapter talks you through emotional awareness around this diagram, explains the whole dynamics of the diagram in terms of your emotions, inner and outer change, talks about positive, negative, strengths, weaknesses, things like that. There's a whole load of concepts around the dynamics of this diagram. So it's not just a case of, oh, here's some pretty colours. There is a real reason why each one of these colours is exactly where it is on this diagram. and how that relates to your emotions in terms of what you say, you think, you feel, what you believe, the way you behave physically and your body actions, your tone of voice, the actual types of sentences we use, the whole dynamics of your emotions fit on this diagram. And you'll be amazed when you read through that chapter. The third chapter of the book then breaks down the change, which is the inner and outer change, breaks that down. And as I said, this might look like a simple diagram, but you know what? When you start to look at change, what is change? How am I meant to put a whole world of change and every possibility into a book like this and say to my son, this is how you manage change? And it took me a couple of years to come up with this. I kept thinking and thinking and thinking on this, and I had to do a lot of research over many, many hours. And I had to keep going and going and going with my own thinking and testing theories out until I finally came up with the concept. I finally came up, there are only 5 changes in the whole world. And I realised that there are. That we always start with saying, oh, I've got a problem, and we try and break it down and work out what's going on to deal with a little bit at a time. What if we did the opposite? Instead of trying to break a problem down, what if you started by building it up and start from the very top? What type of problem are you dealing with? That's the first one to look at. And there are 5 types of change in the whole world that every single problem will fit into. And if you can start with that and categorize it, it gives you a really solid foundation for working forward. So 5 types of change. And I thought, okay, so we got there, we've got a system. And then I realized, hang on, something's missing. And I continued to develop the system until I finally realized that of the changes, both inner and outer, every change has a root cause. And you know what? If you don't deal with the root cause of a problem, the problem will just keep recurring. So it's like having something change and you try to deal with it, but you keep trying and trying and trying to deal with it, but it keeps happening over and over and over again. You're probably missing a root cause in there somewhere. So the final chapter in this book talks about the root cause of all your problems. And again, it comes down to 5 root causes. And when you can work through this book and understand this system in this context of an emotional map, a diagram of where your emotions sit right now, what emotional state are you in? And not just overall, but about various different topics going on in your life. And what does that give you as an overall image of your life? So we'll talk you through how to work that out, how to recognize putting each of your individual problems into a category of saying, that's what's changed. And then when you know what's changed, you can look at the root cause. With the root cause, you can then go, right, now I can see what my options are, what my strengths and weaknesses are. How can I turn that into a solution that can give me the keys to success, the keys to overcoming my own problems? When you get that, as the title on the book says, I'm going to go to the book here, Shining a Torch on Depression and Lighting the Way to Emotional Awareness in Teenagers and Young Adults. This is the book that will do exactly that. It will shine a light on depression. It literally is going to show you exactly what depression looks like in terms of your emotional state and why it's important to actually become aware of it, acknowledge it, address it, and learn about it. It's then going to teach you how to turn that around and make sure that you always work up towards the positive, what the alternatives are. It's going to talk about your primitive brain as well. Why do we even have these emotions? And how does trying to live in today's world create challenges that we find difficult to overcome and actually really, really relevant to our primitive brain? In the book, as I talk through each of the emotions, I teach you what that emotion would have served as a purpose if you were a caveman, right? So if you were living in a primitive state, out hunting, going back to your cave, sitting by the campfire, around your family, trying to find a purpose in society as a caveman, and certainly 10, 20,000 years ago, because that's what our brain is designed for, not today's society and today's complex issues. But our brain hasn't changed. Everything else in the world has changed, but not our emotional cycle. So it teaches you to understand your primitive brain and how that serves a purpose in today's society. With that knowledge, you can help to override that and take control back. With this system, you can learn to overcome all of your challenges and barriers with the root causes, turning those into keys of success and overcoming all of your challenges. Why would you not want to learn how to manage your own emotions for life? Because that's what this book does. My son has made an incredible improvement. His initial progress within weeks of me starting this system with him, and I did not have a book to read from. I had to develop this as I went along. But within weeks, we sat in a cafe way before lockdown, several years before lockdown, but we sat in a cafe and a friend of his walked in and sat down and said, "I've realised that hanging around with Matt makes me a better person." And my son had actually been taking the lessons that I learnt, was teaching him, and using them to help his friends. So if my system was helping people by proxy and I wasn't even near them, hadn't been near them, I thought that was my light bulb moment. I need to do something with this. This has the potential to help so many people. The only apology I've got is it's taken so long to get here. But it is here. So this is my YouTube channel where I will continue to talk about Brain Unchained, and to let you know that also every week on Facebook I have a live discussion for about an hour with a guest speaker on mental health awareness. And every week I share those videos to YouTube afterwards. I download them and then upload them to YouTube to share across other social media platforms, because I know not everybody is on Facebook or a big fan of it. That's a bit of a Marmite subject, so we'll leave that there. And if you don't live in the UK and you don't know what Marmite is, you're probably best off not knowing. But it's one of those things, it's, you know, love it or hate it. But I love Facebook. I've connected with some great people there, but I also appreciate there are some amazing people here on YouTube, and I want to share this with you. So come and click on the subscribe to my channel, please. I'm doing this as a pre-record, but I would love to do live shows on here. I don't see the point in doing it until I get to enough subscribers. So if we can get me up to, do you know what, I'm going to set a goal. One of the great things about this book gives you the power of setting goals and purpose. Let's set the goal of 1,000 subscribers. When I get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, I will start doing live discussions on YouTube. But until then, you'll get uploads, pre-records, lots of updates. You can come and join me on Facebook, subscribe here, hit like, and please don't forget to comment below the videos as well, and I will get back to you. Thank you very much for watching, and welcome to the channel.